In this week's drive, we make the Mercedes filling in an Audi sandwich, go wide for a wilder ride, line up for the two-wheeled Porsche Cup, and fail to scale new heights. All this and more in this week's Drive. As if roaring round the streets of Monaco isn't enough, Ralf Schumacher has been setting the streets of Stuttgart ringing with a scream of the BMW engine in his Williams Formula One car. This demonstration is a bit of German rivalry, as BMW's opposition, Mercedes-Benz, are based in Stuttgart and power the McLaren team. Ralf started the Monaco race from pole position and led initially, but eventually conceded the lead to his teammate Juan Pablo Montoya, who had started third. Ralf eventually finished fourth, behind series leader Kimi Raikkonen and his brother Michael, the reigning world champion. But there's no place on earth quite like the tiny, self-governing principality on France's Mediterranean coast, ruled by the world's longest-reigning monarch. In fact, Prince Rainier turned 80 on the day of this year's Monaco Grand Prix, and the race always starts an hour later than anywhere else to allow the prince time for a decent lunch. Monaco today is all about glamour, charm and style. And for 1 week of a year, it's also about speed, thrills and danger on a track which has changed only slightly in 50 years. To this year's winner, success at Monaco is as good as winning the Indy 500, and he's done both.
You know, it's Monaco, the glamour, everything, you know, it's great, you know. The place where the race is really good. You know, the racetrack is very tight, you know, it's for the speeds we're doing, it makes it quite complicated.
Unlike Indianapolis, Monaco is not a high-speed track. It's tight, twisty and surrounded by unforgiving barriers. It doesn't encourage any mistakes, as Montoya's teammate Ralf Schumacher found out when he had to stop and reverse after missing the apex of one curve. Monaco has tight corners with a surface which is a public road for most of the year, although it was resurfaced in time for this year's race. And it has something that no other modern racetrack has: a tunnel. The cars wind down a hill, picking up speed as they go, then dive into the tunnel, which is also the fastest point on the track. Grand Prix cars will reach over 300 kilometers an hour there. The driver has to adjust to the sudden darkness, then the sudden changes in lighting, and the bright light as he nears the tunnel's exit. This happens about 80 times, once every minute and a quarter. In fact, the light at the end of the tunnel isn't so problematic, as the human eye can accommodate changes from darkness to light more swiftly than the other way round. Englishman Graham Hill, who raced at the Monaco Grand Prix 18 times and won 5 of them, was once asked if the lights in the tunnel ever worried him. "Lights?" he famously replied. "What lights?" The double world champion also won at Indianapolis and is the only man to have won the Le Mans 24-hour too. Despite promising showing by various team drivers over the years, the win by Montoya this year was the first for a Williams car in 20 years. BMW's engines were good enough for first and fourth on the day to overcome the jinx that the tiny state has held for the team. Raikkonen's second place at Monaco keeps him at the top of the championship, and finishing ahead of Michael Schumacher puts more air between them, both well clear of everyone else. Interestingly, the Williams pair are now tied. For the teams, the gap is narrower, but the strong result from Williams moves them ahead of Renault. Next is Montreal in Canada. In Germany, Matthias Ekstrom made an explosive start to the third round of the DTM Championship in front of 38,000 spectators at the Nürburgring, forcing his Abt Audi into an early lead from fourth place on the grid. In a frantic opening to the 41-lap touring car race, three-time DTM champion Bernd Schneider's start was just as exciting. His AMG Mercedes nudged Peter Dumbreck, spinning the Team Phoenix car and leaving Dumbreck floundering in the sand trap. This brought the safety car out after just 5 laps. DTM champion Laurent Aiello grabbed the lead after the restart, but the Audi driver's spell at the front of the field was brief when he was forced into the pits for refueling. Christian Albers, fresh from his first DTM career victory at Adria 2 weeks before, slipped past AMG Mercedes teammate Marcel Fassler and into the lead. Helped by some sound pit stops from his team, Albers held off Fassler in second, opening up a 7-second gap on his teammate and nearest rival. Further down the field, Schneider in the silver Mercedes and Aiello in the Audi were locked in a thrilling battle for the final podium place. Schneider demonstrated all the experience that has helped him to 3 DTM titles when he slipped inside Aiello's Audi to steal third place. But Aiello retook the place just seconds later, burning past the Mercedes on the inside and into the final podium position. The race kept the Nürburgring crowd entertained right to the end, as Martin Tomsik spun off the track on the final lap. There was to be no recovery as Tomsik saw his bid for a top 5 place go up in smoke. Up front, Albers cruised to victory, leading Fassler by over 7 seconds.
I feel really good, really great, and it's perfect, you know, now at this moment that I have 2 victories behind my name, and I'm the first Dutchman who wins DTM, so I'm really glad with that.
Albers now leads by 2 points from Fassler. Schneider is third, a single point ahead of Aiello. It was a packed house at Lowe's Motor Speedway in North Carolina for the Coca-Cola 600, the longest oval track race in the world. The rain had been on and off all weekend and caused problems at the track, but the sun made an appearance for the start of the event, race 12 out of 36.
Flag stops, here he comes.
The caution flag came out on lap 198 when Ricky Rudd overshot the pit lane entrance and tore up the wet and muddy infield grass before coming to a stop.
I told him to pit. He thought he could get it woed up, but he couldn't.
But I'm going to tell you what, Darrell, that's something you won't see a person like Ricky Rudd.
Dale Earnhardt Jr., second in the point standings and a race favourite, also had problems. He was in second place when he spun off the racing line and backed his Chevrolet into the wall. The crash apparently damaged a brake hose, and Earnhardt tried to continue until bright orange flames were seen shooting out from behind one wheel. He made it to the pits and eventually finished in 41st place. Then, on lap 233, Steve Park got into a spin but managed to come to a stop without hitting anyone else, thanks mostly to the avoiding action taken by the other drivers.
So many other cars.
Kevin LePage and Ricky Rudd just squeaked by here.
Pretty much all by itself. It just looked like he got up a little high over there, and around she came.
Larry Foyt made a nice move.
Later, Ricky Craven blew up his engine and took Larry Foyt out of the race with him when Foyt got caught up in the oil and debris before hitting the wall.
Behind him, he gets in the oil. He's going to hit the outside wall. Goes up and hits it. Jimmy Johnson.
The rain shower was brief, but officials expected it would take 3 hours to dry the track, and so it was Jimmy Johnson who was leading at the time.
The 2 guys closest to him, Dale Earnhardt Jr.'s back.
The Indy 500 was run at the Brickyard for the 87th time.
Ladies and gentlemen, start your engines.
The famous call made by Mary Holman George, chair of the Indianapolis Speedway. Brazilian Helio Castroneves was trying to become the first driver in history to win the race 3 years in a row. The only woman in the field, Sarah Fisher, made an early exit when she blew an engine. The 22-year-old blonde has been voted IndyCar's most popular driver for 2 seasons and is the fastest female qualifier in Indy history. There was to be no storybook ending to Michael Andretti's final race. Instead of clutching the one trophy that has eluded him, Andretti's 14th Indy 500 ended like all the others, in disappointment. Andretti's dreams were dashed by a broken throttle cable midway through the race. A dramatic crash for British rookie Dan Weldon on lap 187 started when Sam Hornish Jr. made a run on Weldon, but Weldon blocked him, sending him towards the grass. But as Weldon went into turn 3, he lost grip, slamming into the wall and turning over while airborne. He landed upside down, stopping in turn 4. Safety crews turned the car over and Weldon was able to climb out. Despite Helio's best efforts, his teammate Gil de Ferran beat him by 0.3 of a second, earning $1.35 million for the win. Tony Kanaan made the Brazilian sweep of the podium. Thomas Schechter of South Africa and rookie Tora Takagi of Japan rounded out the top 5. At the first round of the European Drag Racing Championship, defending Top Fuel champ Kim Raymond of Denmark didn't make the final, which was between locals Smack Smith and Gary Page. Despite his engine blowing as he crossed the line, Smith won in 4.959 seconds at 451 kilometres an hour. Sweden's Roger Johansson comfortably won the Pro Modified class final in a time of 6.462 seconds from Henry Houston of the Netherlands at 6.88 seconds. Defending champion Håkan Nilsson of Sweden was eliminated in the semi-finals. Britain's Dave Wilson beat the reigning European champ top methanol dragster pilot Peter Schofer from Germany, setting a new European record of 5.461 seconds at a speed of 393 kilometres an hour. In the final event of the day, Per Bengtsson of Sweden won the Super Twin motorcycle class in 7.212 seconds from Norwegian Ronnie Arsen. Steering the big bikes is often a real handful. The second round of the 6-event championship series is in Alastaro in Finland. To the very different world of motorcycle road racing now, where the Isle of Man claimed the life of David Jeffries in practice for the Formula 1 TT. His Suzuki teammate, Adrian Archibald, sets off on the 60-kilometre course. Fellow Irishman Ian Luffler was to finish second on his Honda, almost 75 seconds behind Archibald. Riders start off individually to prevent congestion on the narrow streets and roads, where riders will average over 200 kilometres an hour for almost an hour. Englishman John McGuinness would place third, over a minute further back, on a Ducati. Riders complete 6 laps of the immensely dangerous course, lined with curbs, walls, houses and people, contending with manhole covers, road markings and humpback bridges. Roads are closed across the island for alternate days through the week of racing as bikes reach speeds of over 280 kilometres an hour on the public roads between villages and around the Snaefell Mountain. The Tourist Trophy races for motorcycles started in 1907 and have been run each year since, barring the war years and 2001, when a foot and mouth scare hit Britain. Many of motorcycle racing's most famous names have won TT races, but many refused to return, saying the venue was unsuitable and too dangerous. Archibald never looked back in the 6-lap race, clocking the winning time of 50 minutes, 15.7 seconds.
Well, obviously, I'm happy it's my first TT one. It wasn't an easy race for me after what's happened this week, but as I say, the whole team and myself pulled together, and just got the result at the end.
The 44-strong field included entries from Germany, Australia, France, Japan, New Zealand and the United States, Norway and Luxembourg. The spectators should have been gathering in Stockholm's Olympic Stadium for the Swedish Speedway Grand Prix. Instead, industrial action forced the race to be relocated to Avesta. That should have been good news for Tony Rickardsson. Avesta's the home track of the 5 times and defending world champ. Sadly for the 32-year-old, and for his many fans, he was eliminated at the semi-final stage. Here, Rickardsson in the white helmet battles with the brilliant young Czech rider Lukas Drummel on bike 10, with American Greg Hancock well ahead in the first semi-final. Still, there was plenty of excitement for fans in the final. Australian Lee Adams battled to control his bike, but mayhem broke out when Hancock had a similar problem. Greg Hancock stayed upright as Adams and Lukas Drummel crashed out, but was excluded from the restart.
Tap me a little bit. He hit Drummel, and Drummel pulled him down. Yeah. It was nothing to do with me.
The second time around, the 3-horse race was something of a procession. Australian Ryan Sullivan dominated on the way to taking the full 25 points for the win. But it was the performance of Drummel that really caught the eye. The 21-year-old from Pardubice in the Czech Republic finished third in the season opener in Poland. He went one better than that here in Sweden, but Adams had to be content with third. After 2 events, Rickardsson and Drummel share the overall lead with 38 points, 7 better than Ryan Sullivan, with his countryman Adams a further 3 points back. how is it that Aussie fans always seem to have a flag handy? Next up, a trip to Cardiff's Millennium Stadium for the British Grand Prix. There's a two-wheeled equal to the Porsche Super Cup, BMW's Boxer Cup, which uses identical sports bikes, also from Germany. Randy Mamela is an ambassador for the International Series.
I believe that BMW's image that they've had in the past is someone who buys a BMW is somebody maybe in their 40s to 50-year-old. But with the International Boxer Cup Series, we're changing that because we've had somebody win a race in 2002 that was 18 years old. And we had somebody in 2002 also win that was 47 years old. So we've had two extremes, and that's one thing that was very unique with the Boxer Cup Series. And this is what kind of attracted me, is to help such a company and to be a part with such a company in racing. The bikes are all the same. You cannot change anything. The regulations show that. And the unique part of this racing is the fact that the only difference is, of course, the rider.
There'll be 10 races this year, 5 as part of the MotoGP World Championship Series.
Let me introduce you to the BMW Boxer that we use in the BMW International Boxer Cup Series. It's based on the 1100S BMW, and this is, of course, is the race version. The biggest differences between the two, of course, is the cosmetics. Of course, on the street you have to have the lights, the mirrors, the speedometer. Of course, with the race bike we have taken that off. The bikes basically are the same weight, 220 kilos. The bike produces 98 horsepower. The one thing that we've done with the race bike, of course, is to raise the bike a little bit off the ground. It does have similar suspension settings to what we run on the street, but as I said, it's just raised off the ground just to give it a little bit more ground clearance. The other things that we've adapted is the covers on the sides of the engine from the race bike. We've actually modified those so they actually fit on the street bike, and gives you a very good protection of the engine when you do ride on the street for those who actually touch the engine on the ground. The other unique thing that we've done with the race bike, of course, is change the exhaust system. We just felt that we needed the Boxer to have that powerful sound of the Boxer engine. But again, when you look at the two bikes, you get what you see here is basically a race bike for the street.
Gloomy, overcast skies and the threat of rain failed to dampen the spirits of 48 riders as they took to the famous banking of Daytona for the opening round of the year. With near-identical bikes, the racing was always going to be close, providing a spectacle that most race organisers can only dream of. Riders competing in the US round represented 34 racing teams from 11 nations. Hosted by the American Motorcycle Association, the race concluded a week-long series of special events presented by BMW during this year's Bike Week in Daytona Beach. Rossana Scoleri of Bologna, Italy, had the distinction of being the first woman to compete in a Boxer Cup race. The 25-year-old endurance racer tackled the high banks of Daytona International Speedway as a member of Italy's Dream Car team. The youngest competitor was 16-year-old Barry Burrell of Great Britain. But after 7 of 13 laps, red flags stopped the race. The cause was this tangle by two riders who road tested their leathers into the Daytona air wall. The restart saw a repeat of the close dicing throughout the pack. In addition to the regular competitors, 6 local riders representing US dealers and another 8 invited journalists and guests, including AMA legend Jay Springsteen. The packed field spelled an early end to the new race after this brave effort to stay in control. Italian racer Roberto Panici soon went to the front, but a pack of 10 or 12 riders was always in close proximity. American rookie Brian Parriott was hanging on to the leaders, drawing on his experience of Daytona. With 3 laps to go, the leading 6 had opened a small gap, riding on the banking at speeds which flatten out the bike's suspension and push the rider's helmet onto the tank. BMW Boxers aren't thin bikes, as these two found at over 220 kilometers an hour when they both went for the same gap. The last lap and the slipstreaming battle was on. No one wanted to be in front, as following riders can draft by on the final straight. Parriott had been in this position before, but never for the win, and allowed Panici to come past before slipping back out on the run to the line. On the slowdown lap, they both seemed to think they'd won. Harriet was celebrating in a very un-BMW fashion. In fact, the camera showed that it was the veteran Panici who had taken the win. As if on cue, when the BMW Cup excitement ended, the skies over Daytona opened up, dumping rain of monsoon proportions and causing remaining races to be postponed until the next day.
And, I'm so happy because it was a very, very strange, very difficult race in 2 times, you know, with the rain, with this weather. I'm really happy.
You know, Roberto, a lot of guys have tried for a lot of years to figure out how to draft their way to a win here at Daytona. How'd you figure it out so fast?
Yeah, I brake very, very late here. It was my best thing. And in the first part, in the technical part, in the circuit, I think I'm the faster. I was the faster, and I'm happy.
I was just asking Roberto, it takes so long to learn how to do that. Were you surprised that he had an idea of how to set you up for the win?
Well, I was surprised. I knew that they're crafty people. They know the motorcycle well. And, yeah, I knew they'd figure it all out. I mean, they've watched this race for years. And that's about all I've done is watched it. I've never been in that position. So never a lead draft at Daytona. That was my first one. So.
This Daytona itself is a very special place. For BMW to have the first round of the 2003 series was fantastic. For BMW North America, for everybody concerned from the BMW Boxer Cup, the International Series, BMW AG, of course, in Germany. To be there was just fantastic. And of course, we had a lot of powerful people inside of BMW there watching the race.
And finally, 70 of the world's best 4x4 rock crawlers attacked the rock slopes in Moab, Utah, for the second of 4 rounds in the Rock Crawlers Association of America National Tour. Rock crawling is one of the fastest growing segments of four-wheeling. Defying logic and gravity, the competition features 4x4 vehicles capable of scaling 90-degree vertical obstacles 3 meters tall. The 2 timed extreme runs were billed as the toughest course ever, and featured 7 slopes with 14 demanding obstacles. These super-modified rock crawlers have massive tyres and huge clearances, and some of them are worth up to $100,000, a costly machine to bounce down a rock face. Like golf, the object of rock crawling is to get the lowest score possible. If it takes you just 1 run to get to the top, you're on your way. Unfortunately for most competitors, there was little success in their first run. Penalties are added for hitting boundary markers, having to back up using a winch, or using rear-wheel steering. During the 2-day event, each driver had to complete a run on both courses for a chance at the $380,000 prize fund. John Bondurant and his spotter Larry McRae, the guy on the end of the rope, won the super modified category. No doubt some of the prize money will go to fixing the truck.
Rock crawling is kind of similar to a motorcycle trials event where you've got timed obstacles, steep waterfall climbs, crevices, drop-offs. They try to roll you over, and you know, we took first place out here, and my spotter Larry McRae and myself, we had a great time.
They've got just 7 weeks to get ready for the next round at Cedar City. We end with more from the Iron Men on the Isle of Man. So you stay on track and up to speed. Make sure you catch next week's Drive.